All right, it's 7 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Please rise and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thanks for joining us tonight. Before we jump in, I just wanted to say welcome back. I know you guys have really not left all summer, but I feel like for us, the August meeting feels like the beginning of the school year. So I'm excited to be here. I'm excited for the year to start. I think it's going to be really awesome to focus on all the things that we've discussed in our work session, and not focus on the financial climate of our schools. So I'm very energized and ready to get started. The first thing we have on our agenda is the consent agenda. If anybody has any questions about that, or if there's a motion to pass it. Is there a motion to pass the consent agenda?
Chair Hawkins, I move that we accept the consent agenda.
Pass the
Pass
consent
the
agenda.
consent agenda as written.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We're a little rusty up here, huh?
I'm tired.
It's a first and a second. All right, we're gonna move right along to spotlight on. And we will start by hearing from Sandy Miller, who has some exciting things to share with us regarding our school bus drivers. Like every other district, we really rely heavily on our bus drivers to get all of our kiddos safely back and forth throughout our district. I'm extremely grateful for the work that you guys do and the extra trainings you put in. So we invite you to join us and share with us.
All right. Thank you, Chair Hawkins, members of the board, and Dr. Lyon. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to give me a few minutes to share my proud moment. We've been competing at the school bus safety exercises since I've been in Sherwood, and we have consistently every year ranked at the top of every class we put drivers in, and it's a good representation of the professional drivers that we have. So what's a school bus safety exercise? It consists of 11 obstacle course events, some of which are what they call offset alley. So you take a bus through a set of what they call gates, and then you have to take it through another set of gates that's like basically one parking lot or parking space over without hitting anything. And diminishing clearance, you start with 6 inches of clearance on each side of the bus, and it diminishes down to 1 inch on each side of the bus. There's a student loading event, what they call wheel track, which is they put these little tennis balls on radiator pipes or hoses, and it's 3 inches of clearance for the duals of the bus, and the drivers have to drive it through without hitting those tennis balls. So it's really designed to bring the driver's focus in on reference points. So the fact that Sherwood always does really well is a great sign that our drivers are really professional and cautious drivers. And so we haven't had the safety exercise in like 4 years, pandemic. So this was the first year we've had it for a while. Usually we have 2. This year we had 1 state safety exercise that was held on June 3rd. Sherwood had 6 drivers participate. We have roughly 20 drivers on staff, so that's a good percentage of our drivers that participated. Of those drivers, we took home trophies for first place in the minibus category, which is our shorter, smaller buses, for Lindsay Price. And Lindsay has consistently done well at our safety exercises. And in this case, she didn't fail us. She had the 2nd overall score out of all the drivers for the day. She was not able to be here tonight. She was out of town, but I did want to recognize her. And then we have first place novice conventional, Mr. Ken Rice here. He placed 25th overall in his first year of driving. So that's really something to be proud of. And we had first place in our SPED events. So it's kind of like a separate little safety exercise for special needs competition. And we had a team of Lindsay Price and Clayton Wong. And they took first place in the special needs events. And along with that, they get to go to a national competition in November and represent Sherwood. So that's a little bonus. So hopefully I'll be coming back in December and telling you how they do.
That is really incredible. I don't think anybody at home can see these massive trophies that they're holding. But it is very impressive. If you step forward, maybe they can see them, but yeah.
There you
This
go.
This is harder than driving. Good job. I'm very appreciative that you guys even took the time to go do those exercises. I know we have tremendous bus drivers here. It's hard to find good drivers. It's hard to maintain them too. So we really, really appreciate the work you guys do to get our kids back and forth safely. And obviously it shows. Thank you guys.
And I appreciate your time and letting me. I'm kind of the proud mama when they do bring home these big trophies. So I appreciate the time.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. Awesome. All right. To follow that up, we have some new administrators to introduce. So I believe maybe Mr. Emmer's going to get there. Okay. All right. It's not what the presentation sheet said, but.
Yeah, good evening, Board of Directors, Dr. Lyons. We are really excited tonight to introduce two new administrators, and I just wanted the privilege of introducing our Sherwood Middle School Principal, Mary Ann Thunderhide, who will introduce her new Associate Principal.
Steve, that's funny. Okay, well, Dr. Lyon and Chair Hawkins, Board of Directors, thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight to introduce our new Associate Principal at Sherwood Middle School, Mr. Kyle Verding. Through a rigorous hiring process that involved the team made up of 12 staff members, including administrators, classified and certified staff, Kyle just rose to the top immediately. Prior to becoming an administrator, Kyle taught at all three levels, elementary, middle, and high school. And before he joined us last year as the Dean of Students at SMS, he worked for the Vancouver Public Schools as a middle school language arts, social studies teacher, AVID coordinator, and a behavior specialist. His experiences inside and outside the classroom equipped him well for the dean and now have set him up to be a successful associate principal. Some of the many strengths that Kyle brings, he is a team player, he's kid-centered, he is creative, solution-focused, and has a strong work ethic. He has also demonstrated his passion for this work over the summer, where he has hit the ground running, supporting our team with in-service week planning, as well as preparing for the upcoming school year. In his short time in this role, Kyle's positive influence has already been felt. We are excited to have him join our administrative team as we continue to support students and staff and partner with families and communities to make this a great year. I hope you don't have too creative things to say right now, but you're up.
Thank you. Members of the board, Chair Hawkins, Dr. Lyon, thank you all for having me here. First, I just have to say thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and the trust that's being placed in me to help guide the education of our students. That is, I mean, it just means the world to me. I have always believed in servant leadership. And so for me, the best leaders lead from the back, and I'm really excited to continue doing that work with our students, with our staff members, and ultimately with our community as a whole. I feel blessed to be a part of the Sherwood community. I've grown up in the area. I was raised in Tigard, so this is an area I've always known really well. It's a wonderful community. SMS is full of phenomenal educators who care about the kids, and I am just ecstatic to be a part of that. So thank you all so much, and I look forward to a wonderful year.
Welcome, Kyle. So I am now going to turn it over to Mr. Adam Mitchell.
All right. Board Chair Hawkins, Superintendent Lyon, Board of Directors, District Staff. It is my pleasure to introduce Josh Pratt as our new Associate Principal of Sherwood High School. Many of the details of Josh's resume are available in his press release, so we will just go through a couple of them to give you an idea of where he's coming from. This is the beginning of Josh's 9th year in education after completing degrees from both Lewis and Clark College and George Fox University. He previously worked in Westland, Wilsonville, and Newburgh School District. To say that Josh has a magnetic personality is an understatement. In his 4 years at Sherwood High School, he has built incredible relationships with staff, students, families, and the Sherwood community. In his new role, those relationships and the new ones he will create moving forward will enable Josh to serve Sherwood High School well and ultimately enhance the educational experience for all of our students. Please join me in congratulating Josh and Kyle as our new associate principals at Sherwood School District.
Good evening, Board Chair Hawkins, Superintendent Lyon, Board of Directors. Thank you all so much for the warm welcome and support as I step into this new role. Over the last 5 years, I've had the great pleasure of working in this exceptional district as a teacher and dean of students at Sherwood High School, and I couldn't be more excited to continue serving the staff, students, and families of Sherwood as an associate principal. I'd like to thank Adam, Mike, and Katie at the high school, as well as all the other administrators in our district for being so welcoming and supportive as I step into my first year in an administrative role here on the team and for making the transition so smooth and welcoming to me. You don't have to spend a lot of time here in Sherwood to see the incredible place that it is and the opportunities that we have for our students here. There's just a tireless dedication of the staff, an incredible group of students, and a really strong network of supportive parents and community members that make me incredibly proud to say that I get to have a career here, hopefully for years to come. As an administrator, I really look forward to partnering with our parent groups and community groups, supporting our teachers and staff in the buildings, and mostly continuing to build phenomenal relationships with all the students at Sherwood High School. I look forward to a great school year coming up and getting to work with all of you in a closer capacity. Thank you.
Okay, well, our board would love to welcome you guys to our administrative team. I hope that we get the opportunity to get to know both of you better this year, and we wish you luck. You won't need it. These kids are perfect. You won't need it, but we're here to support you. And we just can't wait to see you in our building. So we want to get out and about and be able to get to know you guys throughout this year. And really, you're truly welcome. All right, it's now time for our report section of the evening. So I will let Dr. Lyon start us off.
Thank you, Chair Hawkins. I want to give a brief report about our school readiness, our getting ready for the school year and all the work that's been done this summer to go in that direction. Something that we had such a tumultuous year last year, but something I'm really proud of is the retention of our leaders in this district. Josh and Kyle represent the sum total of all the administrative principal, director, associate principals, our entire administrative team. That's it. And both Josh and Kyle are in-house. So we are really trying to shape a culture of providing opportunities for our leaders to grow and be their best. And it's something that I take very seriously. The executive team takes very seriously. And we want that retention rate, and we want to help people advance and grow as leaders. And we have a responsibility to do that for the greater good beyond Sherwood, just for public education, but we certainly want the benefit right here in Sherwood. And so that's a really, really testament to and much gratitude to our administrative team. Last year was tough, and everybody hung in there and worked together to get through it. And our brighter days are in front of us. A couple of tweaks to the administrative roles that I wanted to mention. When I got here, the person who runs our technology arm, which, as you know, is so incredibly important to a school district, Brady Strutz, had the title of assistant director. And so my logical question was, well, then who's the director? Well, there was no director. Brady was an assistant to no one. So we have changed that. And Brady is our new director of technology. And that was a overdue tweak. The other thing, as we noted during the work session, the incredible job that Christine Andreg, our assistant to the board and to the superintendent, has done, not only in keeping us all, moving forward, but the communications lift has really been something. And so we defined her role. We actually split it into two. Half of the duties as assistant to the board and the superintendent, and half as our communication specialist. That's already what she was doing, but we felt it was very important to formalize that so that we could have dedicated time to spend on strategic communications. And as you heard tonight, just great ideas coming from Christine. We are pretty much, you're never fully staffed in a school district, but Steve Emmert and his team in HR have done a great job this summer. I mean, you found a physics teacher for Sherwood High School. That was great. And I say that because some of these staffing positions are very difficult to fill. We are almost fully staffed and we are ready to go for the new school year. We are going to welcome 44 to 50 new staff members, custodians, bus drivers, nutrition service workers, teachers, everybody here on Monday and Tuesday for the new staff academy. And we are excited about that. We are watching student enrollment daily, if not 2 or 3 times a day. We are watching the registration numbers at the elementary schools and the class sizes at each grade level. And this is always the week or 2 before school starts, something that we look at very closely, because you always have situations where you have large class sizes that emerge at certain levels. And we are watching that very closely. We are talking internally about solutions to overly large class sizes, and we will address those as best we can with the resources that we have. We passed a budget this year that has almost exactly the same number of certified teaching positions as we did last year. That was the maintenance promise of the levy. And so we don't have the capacity, even though we passed the levy, to do an expansion of certified teaching positions, because that's not what we told the public we needed to do at this point in time. And so that maintenance element of the levy is important to keep in mind. But with that said, we are working diligently to address the class sizes as best we can. And we will work with our principals and our parents in meetings directly and work through any issues. And we've got some ideas. We're super excited. Athletics and band has started. Our athletic director, our high school principal, Adam, are doing a great job of monitoring these outrageous temperatures that we're experiencing. And we do not put student athletes or band members out onto fields when it is unsafe to do so. And we do a really, really good job of monitoring that. The most exciting news of the night is the back gates of Sherwood High School are open. They are open. And we have a schedule. We have a schedule worked out where they will be closed so that they can accommodate the bus movement in and out of Sherwood High School. But at all other times, if things go as we intend, those gates will be open, and that will help people flow in and out of Sherwood High School. We are working to catch up on some field issues throughout the district. I know a lot more about fields than I thought over the last couple of weeks, but that's a good thing. I really want to give a shout out to our soccer association parents who have taken the position of trying to get closer to us, partner, work through the issues that we have, and we are making progress. We met with a gentleman this afternoon, Chair Hawkins, myself, Jim Rose, and we talked specifically about treatments to these fields and the expected course of action. We lost a lot of ground because of our budget uncertainty. We did stop watering. And when you stop watering, the bad things happen. And we knew they were going to happen, but the cost of irrigating those fields is very expensive. And we did that, and now we're catching up. And I'm very confident with the team that Jim is leading, and the communication plan is there. So that's going to turn out very, very well. We've gotten a little feedback, not a lot, on the change of the middle school start time. We did tweak the start time schedule at the middle school. That was purely a transportation move. It was necessary because last year You couldn't get those high school kids that were on that same bus that dropped middle school kids to the high school on time. And we had a chronically late group of kids to first period at the high school. By staggering the times, we can now drop the high school kids and then proceed to the middle school. Everybody will be on time. Keep in mind, it's not a clean run with our buses. We have lots of buses that go out on routes, collect elementary school students, take them to the elementary schools, and then head right back out to pick up the middle school and the high school kids. And so that whole thing, in order for it to work, we needed to adjust that time. And so far, so good on that. And then finally, and I will lots more to hear about this later, but we are very excited. The focus this year is to celebrate Sherwood schools and the great things that are going on in the schools, but really to be able to express to our parents and community the gratitude that we feel for their support that allows us to operate this year successfully. And then we want to reinvigorate parent partnerships in our district. We want to fully embrace parent feedback, participation, involvement, and make this a teamwork environment. And we're very serious about that work. We've got some great ideas, and it's all around a framework of celebrating the great people we have and the great work that we do.
Very nice. That was a lot of good stuff to report on. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, I will head on down the line. Director Thornton, do you have anything you would like to report on?
Yeah, I'll just make it quick. Obviously, I've only been on the board for a month here, so it's not a ton to report, but like Jeremy, like you're saying, it's a kind of exciting time of year to see the kids back in sports and music, and just seeing that activity again is just a lot of fun. I have gotten a lot of emails about the field, but I'm glad to hear that that is being addressed, and I trust that that's a good plan. And I've been just directing parents to you, Jim, if there are other concerns, but it sounds like it's a great plan. I was supposed to attend the OSBA conference this weekend. I was really actually looking forward to it. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go, but I did go through a bunch of their kind of training videos and things like that. So I'm kind of getting excited about the job here on the school board and trying to kind of bone up on that. And I know we're going to talk about the book reconsideration committee later, but I was able to find somebody for that committee, and we'll talk about later. But a very wonderful human being, Courtney Constantine. She's a mother in the district and also a local author, so I thought that was kind of fun. So that's about really all I have to report, and I'll pass it on down the line to Hans.
Thanks, Matt. Yes, also new to the board and excited about the beginning of the year. It's great to see some familiar faces in the small audience that I really do recognize. And I don't know, keep an eye on, maybe you better not keep an eye on my kids. No, just kidding. But I'm excited. I think the tone that I've perceived from the community is exactly what we're hearing from Matt and other directors, that there's an excitement, there's a vibration in the air of we're ready to go, and there's a lot of work that has been done that turned out successfully, and to celebrate those successes and look forward to this year will be very exciting, I think, for everybody. So I'm learning a lot, as Matt said, going through some training videos, and I think it'll be just a lot of fun and should be very exciting. Thank you.
All right, Director Carson.
I will echo my excitement for this year. And like I've stated before, I think this will be a true operating year since COVID. And I think we're all excited to see what that is again. And everyone shine in their departments and students get back to normal. Side note, I got to go up to Seattle this past weekend and see the Orioles play. And if you're not familiar, our own Adley Rushman plays for the Orioles. So I was very confused. We're sitting in the Orioles section. I'm wearing a Seattle shirt and I have the Beaver hoodie. And so I had a crisis going on, but it was super fun. The Mariners lost, but that's okay. Adley won.
Director Thorne.
Nothing really to report, just excited for my kids to go back to school. And to have, it's funny, you say that when they're in second grade, you also say that when they're in high school. But excited to have some routine back, excited for the sports and the band, and just really echoing what you said about just a normal school year. I feel like is this real good? Like, I don't want to say that. But I'm excited for a normal operating year. The future looks bright, and thank you for taking such good care of our kids when they're in your care during the day. We're grateful.
Absolutely. I don't know if I'm quite ready for mine to go back, but I am tired of feeding them. And so it's amazing how much they eat over the course of the summer days when they are home. I don't know how you guys get them fed and keep them happy for that many hours, but at home they need to eat every 20 minutes. And so I'm not really looking for them to go back to school, but I'm looking forward to my kitchen closing for several hours of the day. But my kids are excited. Middle school, they got to see their schedule today, and I didn't even pay attention. It's already open house tomorrow. They get to run around, and it was fun to see text messages come in from kids' moms wanting to meet and run around the building together. And I love that like sense of excitement when the school year starts and everyone gets their clean shoes on and, like dresses their best for like the first 2 days. It's exciting. I love it. So anyways, I'm excited to get engaged. I love all the reports. I was really happy about the work session. I'm sure people don't tune into that as much as they do the board meeting, but all of the goals that the district has to accomplish this year are truly tremendous goals. And I have no doubt they will accomplish all of them, but really our kids are in such amazing, capable hands. And so we are very, very lucky here in Sherwood. I don't really have anything amazing to report. We will move on to public comment, which I don't actually know if we have any this evening because I did not check in ahead of time. We do?
We do not have public comment.
Just kidding. We're going to fly right by that part of tonight's meeting because we have none. That's okay. This concludes our public comment section for tonight. Let's see what's up next. We're going to do our graduation requirements update with Miss Marlene Carroll. I guess nobody had any comments about that yet.
Okay, thank you, Board Chair Hawkins, Dr. Lyon, and board members. Okay, tonight we're going to talk a little bit about Sherwood's diploma system that we currently have, the new legislation that passed, Senate Bill 3, our potential implementation plan as of this moment in time, and some of the work ahead that lays in front of us. Just to give you a little background information, here in Sherwood, we offer 6 different diploma options. We offer the state required options, and then we offer the Sherwood additional requirement options. So 6 in total. The Oregon high school diploma requires that students take 24 credits, and it's a variety of credits. A modified diploma may be earned by students who have demonstrated an inability to meet the full set of academic content standards required for the regular high school diploma, even with reasonable modifications and accommodations. And then the extended diploma does the same thing, except they earn it who have demonstrated the inability to meet a full set of academic content standards required for the high school diploma and the modified diploma. So we offer a variety of diplomas in the state of Oregon to meet a variety of students' learning needs. And that's really important to do in our school systems. In addition to that, Sherwood offers 3 additional opportunities for students. The Sherwood diploma requires students get a total of 28 credits. And then the honors diploma requires that students have a GPA of 3.5 or above, and then some additional requirements. They need to complete 2 years of a world language. And they are required to challenge themselves in dual credit and advanced placement. And that looks like taking a class in either language arts or social science, advanced placement or dual credit course, math or science, and then one elective or one more additional core area. In addition to the honors diploma, we offer an advanced honors diploma. And the advanced honors diploma, again, 3.5 GPA, all the requirements of the honors diploma. And in addition to that, they have to take one advanced placement or dual credit course in each of the areas. So one in language arts, one in social science, one in math, one in science. And so that's kind of how our diploma system works. And I'm telling you all of this because as the legislation passes more and more credit requirements, it really does impact all three of our diploma options. And so we really pay very close attention to that and, look and see if that works for our students and see if there's barriers that maybe our diploma options, see if the two are in conflict, basically the new law and what we are offering. So I'm going to get into Senate Bill 3. Senate Bill 3 is a new requirement for high school diplomas. And what it requires is that students have to take half a credit of higher education and career path skills and half a credit of personal finance education. Let me tell you a little bit about what those are. So higher education and career path skills, we already offer through our homeroom. Those are skills like career skills, building resumes, applying for colleges. We are currently already offering that and we require that credit. So we're fine on the career path skills credit. There will likely be some new standards, but we believe we can work that through what we're currently offering and maybe just make it a little more robust or tweak it in some way to hit the requirements of the law. The personal finance credit is brand new to us. That requirement will be brand new. And it is focused on building credit, budgeting, taxes. Some of you may remember that you had this requirement when you were in high school. So we're bringing that back. The reason why we're sharing this with you now is because this takes effect for our 26-27 graduates, which means our incoming ninth graders. Normally, we like to provide any sort of diploma requirements far in advance of our students coming in. We won't be able to do that for our ninth graders because we just don't know the exact guidance of this. We do have a potential implementation plan though. So at this time, without the guidance from ODE, which will be released later this fall, we're thinking that we will likely have to look at our Sherwood diploma and reduce the 0.5 elective requirement, one of the 0.5 elective requirements, and replace that with a personal finance course. That means that our students will lose a little bit of their elective options to replace it with this course. If allowed, we're hoping that we can find some alternative pathways to get this credit. So sometimes a law will state that you can earn a credit through a different course if it hits the required standards. So if you're teaching the standards in a business course, then you can earn that personal finance credit and you can earn the business course credit. And so we're looking at doing that if that is allowed, and we'll know more about that. The same is true with the financial algebra or maybe a consumer math course, and even potentially a class like AVID, depending on what the personal finance standards are that they require us to implement. So we're looking at a variety of different options, but right now that looks like the best route. And then if a student is doing the personal finance 0.5 course, they could take that anytime during their high school career is what we're thinking. Obviously for ninth graders, they would take it 10th, 11th, or 12th in order to earn that requirement before they graduate.
Do we already offer a personal finance course?
We do. We offer a business course. We would have to adjust that to ensure that we're teaching all the standards. So it isn't exactly aligned with what this is. It's more like career-based and applicable, but yes.
So
yes
right now,
and no.
Okay, so right now we offer a business course,
Yes.
but is there, in that syllabus, is there personal finance management lessons currently?
There are, but it doesn't hit all the standards that are required under this type of personal finance.
Okay.
Mhm.
Just a comment, not a question.
Yep.
But I very much support the initiative to have a designated personal finance class. That is something that's invaluable to everybody. I would say that it shows if you've not taken one, and it shows very soon in your young adult life. So just a comment there, but would love to see that be a designated on its own rather than working it into another. I just think it's more valuable that way.
I had one other question as well. So I have an incoming freshman. And if he were to take whatever our version is now of personal finance, his freshman year, basically what you're saying is it wouldn't qualify. He'd need to take another form of the same sort of class at some point again to achieve these standards.
Correct, because the course, how it's designed right now is it's not hitting the targeted standards that the state is expecting from this personal finance course. Although it is a business course and there might be some things that it's touching on, it's not going in depth around like that personal finance structure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So our next steps are really waiting for the Oregon Department of Education to issue guidance. That will give us a much clearer understanding of what the personal finance standards are. If they're going to change at all from what is currently listed and offered with ODE, and what we can kind of maneuver and do with those, right? After we get the guidance, that's when we go into like designing the course. And once it's designed and ready to implement, then we'll start seeing it in the academic planning guide. And then starting next fall, students will be able to take it. The last thing that we really want to pay attention to with all of this and any of the new legislation that's come through is really reviewing Sherwood's diploma requirements and options that go beyond what the state requires us to offer. And so we want to do that because as we've had new legislation over the past few years, we're seeing that it's impacting students, and what we want to do is make sure that all of our diploma options are really intended to serve students in the best way possible. So, for example, looking at our requirements around world language. Now the state allows students who are multilingual learners to take a test and earn credit for their home language so that they don't have to like essentially learn English in the English only class. Then they know their home language. And then they also have to take Spanish because that's the world language that we offer. Right now, you have to take 2 credits of world language to get an honors or an advanced honors diploma. So we want to look at that and see if we can offer the test instead and see what we can do to adjust that, if that makes sense. In addition, we have students who maybe are going into a field of nursing, and maybe they want to take a variety of AP or advanced courses, dual credit courses, but they want to take 4 science AP courses because they really want to maybe advance their coursework before they get to college. Again, they can't do that in the advanced honors necessarily because they are required to take them in each content area. And so we want to look at that. We want to look and see if it has the impact. We want to see how the new legislation will impact those different options, and if we need to adjust or tweak any of those in any way. So Mr. Mitchell will be leading kind of a parent group with students and staffs and families, and in partnership with teaching and learning, kind of really diving into that work and seeing what do we need to adjust, if anything.
Marlene, a question with maybe a comment as
Mhm.
well. So I understand that Sherwood has these special higher level, so to speak, diplomas available. Is there any evidence or any follow-up? Does that diploma really make any difference in their futures as far as moving on to college, moving on to trade schools? It's nice to have, I understand that, and it's accomplishment, but does it really pan out that it matters much?
I think there's pretty solid research, certainly from College Board, around that taking an advanced placement course, an AP course or an IB course, is more likely to make you more prepared for college. The skills that you're learning in those higher level courses and those advanced courses, they really are the skills that they're college level skills, they're college level reading. And so, yes.
No, I have no question about the
Okay.
rigor of an AP or dual credit
Yes.
course. It's just that classification of the diploma that's issued at Sherwood. Does that really matter? For your comment about a science-based AP
Gotcha.
student, they won't earn that higher diploma, but
So-
yet they'll have the rigor
Right.
of the
So
background.
you probably have all seen rankings, high school rankings, and there are benefits to offering rigorous diplomas, even to increase the quality of education in a school district, because the more kids you have taking advanced placement or IB courses means the percentage will be worked into a calculation from the high school rankings officials, and those do matter. It's how many students take the test, how many students pass the test at 3s and 4 level and above. And all of that is calculated within it. So it matters. And it doesn't matter necessarily, it's complicated and nuanced in some ways, but.
All right. Well, I can tell you though, from being at graduation, the kids who do receive their advanced honors diploma, I mean, the pride, and the accomplishment of being able to do that, it's so cool. It's palpable. You see how proud they are in their cords. And I mean, it's incredible. It's a huge accomplishment to be able to get through those classes and do well. I don't have any questions for you, but I'm excited about the changes. I'm sorry it causes more work for you, but I am excited about kids having personal finance. We hire a lot of really young kids at the place that I own, and they know nothing about, what to do with their taxes or their paychecks or how to file. And it's hard for them to learn the wrong way. It would be wonderful if they knew what to do when they were applying and where to put their money. And so I think that's a great course for us to be offering those students.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, up next, we have Jim Rose. He's going to lead us through an update regarding Sherwood West.
Good evening, Chair Hawkins, Superintendent Lyon, members of the board. I get to share with you a bit about the work that our city has been doing on their Sherwood West concept plan. What I have here tonight is a subset of the slide deck that they showed at the July 18th meeting. And at that meeting, they actually adopted this concept plan. I'm just going to hit some of the highlights and really those items that maybe are most relevant to the school district. The concept plan is a long-range planning tool, and it helps the city and the community decide and direct how the city will grow. And the first step is expanding the urban growth boundary, which some of you may remember we have some experience with. We had to do that to actually build the high school. It's not an easy process, and it has a very specific timeline for when requests can be made, and that is, it's like a 6-year cycle. And so the city is looking at that to make their decisions when and if and when they will move part of the community into the urban growth boundary. And I think a critical point to keep in mind here for us and for the community is this is a planning document and is conceptual, and this is not exactly how the area will develop. And locations for different items, including roads and schools and those kinds of things, will change between now when they adopt this plan and when that ground may be built. And it is a 50-year plan. So this is a long-term view of the area. This map shows the area we're talking about. It's almost 1,300 acres across 126 properties. The plan was originally developed in 2016. The city decided to take a new look at it and decided it was important to revisit it for a number of reasons, including changing priorities, changing conditions, and new laws, and of course, a new high school that in 2016 hadn't been cited yet exactly. And so they had to look at how that will affect the area. The city has had 2 committees working on this project since 2021, the Technical Advisory Committee and the Citizen Advisory Committee. I was fortunate enough to get to sit on the Citizen Advisory Committee and represent the district. And you can see the type of work they've completed through this rather extensive process. Key component of their relook was really community engagement and feedback. And in addition to the Citizen Advisory Committee, there was public testimony, social media campaigns, booths at community events, and a virtual open house, because some of this occurred kind of still in the throes of the pandemic. This is rather long-winded here, but they did refresh the vision, goals, and kind of the evaluation criteria that guided the original concept plan. And this work and this revision was really based on some of the input from the Citizen Advisory Committee and the Technical Advisory Committee, as well as looking into research that's been updated, updated policies, regulations, transportation issues, and of course, economic opportunities that may have changed. They laid out some fairly specific goals. The goals were focused on the environment and access to it, business and employment opportunities to help Sherwood residents work here also. We have a large part of our population in this town that leave town to work. And so they're looking for opportunities to keep people closer to home. They want to ensure that transportation works to enhance our community, including a network of active transportation options. And this directly supports our safe routes to schools work. And we have passed a resolution earlier in the consent agenda that speaks to that. And then finally, to be ready for growth and development with a kind of pragmatic approach to what is likely coming. And that's growth. Sherwood's likely to grow as we have Brookman Road and other areas that complete their construction. This is a desirable community that people are moving to. This, just real quick, are some of the types of businesses the city would like to attract to Sherwood. Adding businesses helps us spread the bond indebtedness across a larger tax base. So that's really good for the district. I think it also offers some opportunities for Adam and his team to look at what new businesses are coming down and what partnerships might be made. There's a real interest in the hospitality part, given that we are kind of the gateway to wine country. And so it'll be interesting to see how that develops. Transportation was an item that brought forth the vast majority of feedback from the community. And this was in part because despite being a concept plan, once a roadway is shown on a map, it just creates an expectation that that's going to happen, that it'll be built there for better or for worse. And a lot of conversation happened about Elwert and its potential realignment at Edie Road, or a new road west of the high school. And so areas that definitely will affect how our high school and future schools in that area are kind of how they're sited for the future ones, and just how they impact traffic at the high school site. So as the work progressed to develop alternatives to the previous concept plan, a number of themes and assumptions were made. The most important for us is that there was 35 to 40 acres needed for a middle school and an elementary school. And this is based on our likely student increase based on the number of homes that they expect to be built under this concept plan. However, if you look closely at the maps, you won't see a site that says middle school or elementary school. And this is in part because we don't know where it will need to be located. We don't know, well, we don't have the funding to purchase land at this time. We don't know how, when, or even if we could acquire the land that might be shown on a map. And we decided as an advisory committee that it was better to note the need for a school and not a specific location. The three alternatives created by the city with the help of the advisory committees are shown here. They focused on mixed employment in the north. And so that's the area, I think it's Shoals-Sherwood Road, just south of there, between Elwert and Roy Rogers. I should know this. It's like 2 blocks from my house. That again is mixed employment. The community park south of Chicken Creek corridor was consistent across all these. And then a commercial kind of mixed use and higher density housing along Kruger Road.
Jim, sorry,
Yes, ma'am.
they're defined by color and it's harder for us to see. Could you define what the colors mean?
I can try, certainly. The purplish area is our mixed employment. So it'll be industrial kinds of spaces. Green areas are parks. Yellow-ish colors, yellow, orange, are housing of various densities. I think the darker color in that family, the more dense the housing is. And then I think some of the orange is like that hospitality, or the red and pinks are hospitality commercial areas. I apologize. I don't have a good copy for myself to read at the moment. So you can see that the kind of north of Edie is one section. A lot of that is the mixed employment. The middle section tends to be a lot of housing. And then the section, and that's from Edie to Kruger, and then south of Kruger has a variety of uses, including a lot of hospitality, some housing, some green for parks. And then one of the key things is that there's low density residential along the western hilltop. So kind of the area above the high school to the west. A lot of that is low density. So from the community, there was a number of things raised. Again, Elwert Road, the safety and design of that was important to the community. Preserving natural features. So a lot of that around Chicken Creek, the riparian zone being honored, and parks being built to reflect that area or protect it. Plans for parks and trails, again, connecting much of our town as we already have through large parts of it to make sure those paths and trails are continued throughout. Again, employment in the north, and then mixed use closer to 99. And there's really that concern about the north-south connector that currently Elwert serves as. And that's recognition that we have folks coming from Yamhill County that get to Elwert and head north to their employment opportunities, maybe in Beaverton or Hillsborough. It also tends to be a route that a fair number of trucks go down, as opposed to continuing down Roy Rogers and to 99 in that way. Ultimately, this is the map that was presented to the city for adoption, and it still reflects those same kind of three items that were across all, or items across all three maps. And this is in fact the map that the city adopted as part of the concept plan. So this is their best projections at different housing types. And housing types are changing. Even when I started working here, we kind of thought of multifamily dwellings, which might be duplexes or apartments, and then single family dwellings, which is your typical standalone home. But now there's middle housing, there's cottage cluster, there's new styles of homes and home development that's really going to make our demographic company, Davis Demographics, look at things, I think, differently. And they're going to have to kind of figure out what does the student yield factor look like for a cottage cluster versus an apartment complex or townhomes. And so that's something that I think we as a district need to be watching for over the next few years and really asking them those questions. Now, there aren't very many of these housing types in development at the moment, but with the existing laws that have been passed, developers have different options and they don't necessarily have to stick with the traditional single family dwelling or multifamily dwelling. They can do many of these regardless of what the zoning says. It's a really interesting dynamic that has changed, I think, for our city to have to project and tend to.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Absolutely.
Okay. What is middle housing? I'm
I
looking through
wish-
these other pictures, but it's not in here.
It's townhomes, it's common wall homes, it's like not quite apartment complexes, but not quite single family dwellings. Cottage clusters are not tiny homes, but they're slightly bigger, but they're oriented like around a common green space or a common yard
Olathe
almost.
Station, if anybody's familiar with that, that's a cottage cluster style.
Yeah.
Middle housing is generally, I'm only speaking because this is what I do, but middle housing is generally going to be, common wall areas. Multifamily is going to be more like condo units. And then you've got the medium density, which is going to be your single family units. And then those will be determined by lot sizes.
Thank you, Director Thorne,
You're
for helping me out there.
So middle housing is more like townhouses. Okay.
So these are the kind of the steps for the city to take to implement some of this. The first would be a urban growth boundary expansion request, and that goes to Metro, and Metro reviews that along with kind of the rest of the Tri-County area request. They would have to go through an infrastructure funding strategy process and then look at future comprehensive plans and zoning regulations and updates along those needs.
Jim,
Yes.
do we know how close we are to a UGB request? How many years away? I mean, where are we at in that 6-year time period you talked about?
I want to say 2024 would be the next opportunity for us.
Okay.
There are some slight caveats when you can do an off, like at the 3-year mark in very limited circumstances, like building a high school, you can make some of those requests. But if I understand right, it's 2024 is the next major urban growth boundary request timeframe.
Do you happen to know if they're going to try and expand the Brookman side of that as well?
I do not know.
Okay.
That's all the conversations that the city planning commission and then of course the city council get to have and wrestle with is, what direction are we going to push? And, they've done a lot around Tonkin Road, but that's more on the industrial side. The housing piece is the one that they're looking at for the Sherwood West.
Thanks.
So this, they will have continued community engagement in this, and this will give, frankly, the city the opportunity to continue to look at it, respond to community needs, respond to community input, so forth. That's actually, I think, my last. Well, there's the process, which is rather in depth. So, and with that, I would open up to comments or questions.
I have a comment. I mean, just from a place of logic, I would hate to see there be industrial type stuff anywhere close to the high school. I think it makes sense for the high school to have some housing around it, as well as some restaurant type, situations where if there are kids, that if it's an open campus and they're allowed, they are not driving somewhere. They can go somewhere, they can walk across the street and grab their lunch, see a park over there. Definitely want some housing over there. It's weird to have the high school just like all by itself over there. For sure, the construction will be a nightmare, but I hope that the city takes it that direction, because definitely if they're talking, I mean, there's so much focus on jobs, but you want also places to house the people. You want them to live here if they're going to work here. And so you got to have, we don't have enough housing right now for that. So I'd like to see that definitely around the high school. I think that the high school would really benefit to having housing and areas where kids can go if they're not driving off campus for their lunches.
No, I agree with that feedback. I am listening to this thinking that I really need to attend a city meeting. That way I can go through all of this in detail and understand it really thoroughly. And I will take the time to really invest myself and get to understand their plan. I mean, the one thing we did keep hearing when we were doing this campaign was that, we would be more supported if there had been more growth in this community. And I know it's a tough thing that I can't fully understand because I'm not born and raised here in Sherwood. I'm a transplant. And so I can't tell other people they shouldn't come here. I came here. It's a great community to be in. And I respect that we want it to grow at kind of a slower pace, because I think that keeps it special. But I'm also happy to see it grow slowly over time and allow other people to come and be a part of our community. And I know that Tib Rosner is being incredibly thoughtful, as are, everybody else on the city council, to plan communities that are walkable and that you can bike and that you can, commingle both sides of Highway 99. So, I mean, I'm very confident that they will come up with a plan that will work well for Sherwood.
Isn't there's a meeting?
There's a meeting.
September 5th
September 5th.
is, okay.
September 5th, the city council has a workshop
Okay.
to discuss the Sherwood West plan and start to consider whether or not they want to draft a letter of application, is how I understand it. And in all my conversations with the city, we're always very clear that we want to be respectful of what the city is doing and the pace that they are going. But when asked, we talk about the impact of Sherwood West and the number of residences that they're talking about on the school district. And that impact, as we have acutely seen with the loss of 400 students, is dramatic. And frankly, the 2016 bond configured this school district to continue that growth. And so from purely the school district lens, it is of benefit to the Sherwood School District for Sherwood West to come online, including the residential homes, so that we can start to uptick our enrollment and continue to grow as a community. We operate campuses right now that are not even anywhere close to 100%. That's a good thing. But in 2016, there were overcrowding issues. And we need to position this school district to return to that steady, measured, thoughtful growth. And Sherwood West is that. And so we need to just, I would encourage the board to attend that September 5 work session so we can hear the dynamics of the issues around this related to our school district.
As a district, if we're in support of that, we could draft like a resolution, right, where we're formally supporting the Sherwood West growth plan.
Yes, we definitely could. And frankly, I think that might be appropriate.
Yeah, I agree.
Anybody else have anything?
I'm conflicted, obviously. I really am, coming here when there was 2,500 people to what it is now. And I understand that time has changed and things grow and we all grow. But I'm also cognizant of the fact that however we got here, we did just get ourselves out of being completely overcrowded and growing way too fast. And I don't want to put us back in a situation where we outgrow a brand new high school that we just built. And I know that, but that takes a lot of planning. That takes a lot of thoughtful planning from us and from the city working together. So, I'm sitting here thinking like, how does St. Paul keep everybody out? Because they do it on purpose because they don't want to grow. So like, that's where I went because it scared me. But I also know that Sherwood will grow, but we need to do this slowly and with a thought process behind it, and housing that is sustainable and lasts, and that it's a walkability, and you can walk down the street and be like, oh, I'm at a park, but oh, I can go grab a burrito right here too and go back to my house. I don't know, and then go to school right here, so I don't know. I'm very conflicted, I just am, but I just want to know that we're doing this not full steam ahead and let the chips fall where they may, but be very calculated. So
Well, I would encourage any of you to join me. I'm going to go September 5th because I know I have questions and I just want to be able to hear it from them, right? I mean, you're coming and giving us their information. And so it'd be wise to go and hear it all and ask the right questions and then really have an informed opinion. So you won't be a quorum if we all go together, as long as we're not deliberating. Exactly. Okay. Well, thank you for that presentation. I know you are going to stay right there to give us another presentation about the school safety overview. I wanted to provide just a tiny bit of context. We probably would have gotten to this presentation or overview at some point regardless, but it came up over and over again when we were doing this levy campaign, that people didn't understand what we had paid for in the bond and why we were needing more money now and what did the bond money even ever pay for. And I know when we campaigned for the bond, we did really thoroughly go over what we were getting, and we had giant signs that showed the community what we were getting for that money. But it's been a long time and a lot of new people who moved into Sherwood. And I felt like it would be very advantageous to share with the community some of the safety things that we currently have in place. And so that's when we engaged in a discussion last year about this. And this has been the first opportunity to bring it forward. But I hope this is a chance for us to take a look at all the things that we already have, because in some ways we have a lot of great safety features that other districts don't have. And then of course we can ask questions about those things too.
Absolutely.
Take it
So
away.
I do plan to walk through some of the safety and security measures we use across the district to help keep our students and our staff safe. And I want to also just stay right up front. We are continually looking at this topic. As you heard earlier during the goals, we have an emergency preparedness committee. We discuss this on a regular basis to make sure that we are staying on top of what we have and looking to the future of what we might need. Just a few of the things we're covered tonight. A little bit about the history, things that are district-wide measures that we're doing. I want to talk specifically about the high school and some work that's happening there that's safety and security related. We have a rooftop access issue we will discuss briefly, and then a couple things related to the city again, the school resource officer, and safe routes to school. So when the 2016 bond was passed, there was foresight, and this precedes my date, so I don't get to take any credit for this, but there was enough foresight to say we need a separate bucket that we can use for safety and security measures. And then soon after we started that work, our owner's rep, Cornerstone Management, you may remember them a bit, they came forward along with, it was Dow at the time, the architects, and said, we really need to have a bigger conversation than just what does the district think they need. And so we organized an event where we had ourselves, Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, Sherwood Police Department. I think we invited the sheriffs, and I think they had one person that was there. And then we brought in our own district staff, and again, Cornerstone and Dowa, and had a rather in-depth and long conversation. It was wide-ranging regarding safety in our schools. And from this discussion, we confirmed the need for a number of things, including entry vestibules, access control, security cameras, and improved radio service for our first responders among other needs. And we spent time discussing each of these items and how they should operate, given a lot of time to staff to talk about how they would work in a school building or be used at their particular level within the district. Going right into entry vestibules, this was high on the list of 2017 needs for us. And the vestibules were customized to fit each school, because at that time, none of our buildings really had a security vestibule. Some of them had what I would call weather vestibules, and that's where you have 2 sets of double doors to try to keep it cool on the inside when it's 100 degrees outside, or vice versa. When it's cold outside, you keep the warmth in. But we didn't have a true security vestibule. And that's why when we design those for each building, you see different styles at different buildings. So what worked at the middle school, what is now the middle school, is different than what worked at Hawksview or what worked at Middleton. And really, as a security vestibule, they are a means of forcing every visitor into the office where an adult can see them. And once in the office, staff have the opportunity to engage with each visitor. And while the vestibule can lock a person out of the office, that's true if we see them as a threat early enough. But in general, most of our visitors coming to the door would likely be let into the office. The recent incident at the high school last spring is a good example. The woman was a former parent. She was not an obvious threat, meaning that she wasn't carrying a weapon. She wasn't exhibiting behavior that would have been reason to keep her out of the office. And she followed students in who were returning from lunch. She walked directly into the office through the vestibule, which is exactly what we want. And that's where our staff was able to engage with her. And it was then that the staff determined a lockdown was needed because she was acting somewhat erratically. And that pause is what allowed A, the lockdown to be initiated, and B, for students then to get to a safe space. Our staff stayed with her the entire time. And this is really how the entry vestibules and lockdown systems are intended to work. Get them into the office, let staff see them, make an assessment. Should the person continue any further, or do we need to engage and hold them there as best we can? We'd like to consider additional measures, but one area that is difficult sometimes is to get our building's use and designs to meet our needs, but also still meet code. And so that's an area that we continue to look at with the architects to figure out, can we change what we're doing in some way that is helpful to us? Or do we keep with the current process, which is, again, how we designed it in 2017, and it is functioning the way we intended it to. Again, this is one of those things that the Emergency Planning Committee reviews, talks about. We work with the officers at the Sherwood Police Department to kind of figure out, is this working? Do we need to make adjustments?
I have a few questions for you about the vestibules. Would you rather me just reserve them all the way till the end?
Let's cover them here, because I kind of go on to other topics.
Okay, and I've discussed this with you as well, but one of my frustrations, especially like when that incident happened with the high school, was that although I wasn't on like the planning committee, I helped the bond campaign. I went out and solicited funds, and so I felt like I was in the know more than like the average resident. And I joined that committee because I felt so strongly about us having something like a safety vestibule. My kids were in elementary school. It seemed strange. You could just wander through. That's why I got involved. So when this happened, I'd had a conversation with Director Adamson at the time, because we both thought what system we had paid for, the bond had paid for, had failed us. Because in our heads, and I'm speaking for her, but I've discussed this with her too, but in our minds, the way we understood it was that when someone came into the office, that person could then lock down the remaining building from that office. Now, we all know in some of the offices, you maybe could go around a back way or whatever, but they could lock the building down from the office is how I understood it to work. When we had a conversation, and I had a conversation with my own students' principal, I found out that was not the way it worked, that because of fire code, that door could not be locked. So If someone went through the vestibule and into the office, at that point, they were in our building and there was no way at that point to lock them out of our space. Are we still following? Okay, so for me, it's a little problematic because I feel, and maybe some of our schools are functioning differently, but if I walk into, say, the middle school, yes, I go through the vestibule and yes, I have to go into the office. But once I'm in the office, the people who are working there and the students that are aides or whoever's passing through, if someone was a true threat, there's nothing to protect those people that are standing there. So for me, as a parent, this is just my own personal opinion, I have always thought, well, not always, since this conversation, I have thought, well, then why do we not require people to be stopped in the vestibule? They cannot come into the remaining building until they've been acknowledged and buzzed through. Just so that we have to take that opportunity to decide that they are welcome into our building. I know that does not stop all threats. There's people who are going to come in, and perhaps that lady, like you said, we would have deemed her safe because we recognized her. It does not stop all threats. But it's certainly an extra layer of protection. What I understand in having conversations is that this community years ago really didn't want that, or didn't seem like they wanted that. They wanted our campuses to be more open than that and more welcoming than that. I totally respect that opinion as well. I just feel like times have changed and the atmosphere has changed, and I feel like it would be right to pose this back to our parents, at least at the schools where we can control it easier, like elementary and possibly middle, and ask parents, what would you prefer? Knowing you may have to sit and wait. We don't have staff, just to answer the door. Knowing you're going to not just be able to wander in whenever you want. Would you opt for that, or would you opt to keep it the way it is? And maybe let that guide how we move forward. Because for me, and I think other community members, that's not functioning in a way that we thought we were getting from it. Does that make sense?
It does.
I agree with you. That was very frustrating, that instance to watch as a parent with kids in that school. I was frustrated for the kids that were not yet in a safe place because it was lunchtime. And I was frustrated for the staff that were put in the position to have to confront this woman. And actually, you really don't know whether they're a threat or not, because you don't know if they are carrying something or not carrying something, because most likely they wouldn't be flashing it around at that point in time. So I personally do not believe that I agree with you that in that instance it failed us. That could have turned out much worse. I'm very thankful for the staff that put themselves in that situation. But I also agree that I would like to have a more discussion about this, because times are a lot different now. And we're responsible for those people, the kids and the staff in those buildings and their safety.
I just want to say, I did not feel like it failed us. I do feel strongly like our staff stayed with her and did the right things. I'm not saying that by any means. And this is not because of that one particular situation. Yeah. It just brought to light that I did not realize that they functioned the way they did. And so I feel like now that I know that, it's important to ask the question. That's all.
Absolutely.
Let me add a couple of elements to that. It is, when you talk about it, it's a little confusing. People get confused. We do have the ability to stop people and hold them in that vestibule. That is not the current practice. That practice would be diametrically opposite of operating open campus at the high school. So when the decision was made to have an open campus at your high school, it more or less by default eliminates the most aggressive use of the vestibule to stop people in there, because you eliminate any opportunity for the students to get out and back to campus in the short period of time. I have asked Jim to convene a committee to look at what a closed campus at Sherwood High School would look like. It's a bit of a challenge because it will require significantly more supervision of students that are now contained and confined to the high school. But we want to not only look at that, we want to get that parent input.
And that's why specifically I said maybe at the elementary and possibly middle school level, because I haven't walked all the buildings. I'm I'm not an expert, but I do know the high school has a lot of ins and outs and kids use a lot of those it's certainly not as easy as it is at Hawksview, you know, and so I acknowledge that, and I know it's not a perfect system, but I would just be interested to hear from our families. And if they say, majority say keep it as is, I respect that too, but I'd like to have the opportunity to let them weigh in.
And I'd just like to piggyback maybe what the vestibule does at one school, elementary, middle, is different than the high school. I don't see any reason that's open for discussion. And I guess the vestibule functions, as Dr. Lyon said, if it's used in that fashion, but the problems do arise with different capabilities of each school.
I think we all agree that a vestibule can be used in different ways. And I think the way we have them set up right now is kind of like the first layer in defense. I think we've all seen that eyes on a person isn't a deterrent. And that was proved in the spring. There's a lot of ways to skin this cat. There really are. Where I work and where I've worked previously, 2 separate districts, you're buzzed in. There's a window, you get in the first set of doors, and there's a window with the reception, and then you're buzzed in and you basically state your business. And if you have to drop off a lunch, there's a rack right there and you drop it off and kids come get it later. You just drop it off. I mean, there's many ways to do it, but I can't get into the main office without my badge or being buzzed in. And same with any guest that comes along. So in terms of like the fire department and code, and then, you know, building and how do we reconfigure a vestibule to be wider to fit a window, if that's the way we go down, and then how, if that's what parents truly want. It's conflicting what happened in the spring because people were so upset, and they have the right to be upset that someone got in the school. But had that incident happened at a football game, we would not be talking about this because it's too big to police. There's too many people there. We have resource officers on site anyway. It would have been a funny story. And this lady was taken off campus, but because she got in the building, now we're upset. So I think there's much more work to be done in terms of like, do we go forward with building out a better vestibule and buzzing people in, or do we go down that road at all? Or we to keep it the same? So.
Yeah, again, safety and security is an iterative process for this district, and how it was designed in 2017, really. The needs have changed, and community input or attitudes or beliefs have probably changed in that time as well. And so the idea of buzzing in may be acceptable now, whereas back then that was pretty clearly not what the community wanted. We need to continue having these conversations and looking at it, see how we do things differently. I will share just briefly. Distributed antenna system is the system that allows our first responders to communicate within our buildings. One of the things we learned at that safety summit in 2017 that was truly frightening was when they came into our buildings, their radios didn't work and their cell phones didn't work. And so their ability to communicate with officers outside of the building was very limited. We very quickly installed this distributed antenna system so that way first responders radios work. This is with, I forget what the entire acronym is, but it's the Washington County, they call it WACA, with the WACA group, and they come in and test annually to make sure that we're not broadcasting on frequencies we aren't supposed to. We're broadcasting with too large of signal to interfere outside of the building. I can tell you that the system was down as they went from an analog system to a digital system last year. And so again, for a short while there, not a longer while than we would have liked, our first responders didn't have the communication they needed. It was very clear just how important this system is and why it was worth putting in back in 2017. Security trio, I've had the opportunity to talk about before, but really this is our access control, which is just badge readers for staff, first responders, and temporary access for like contractors, those kinds of things. Our intrusion detection system, and so this is for after hours monitoring of the building. It helps us know if someone is in the building when they shouldn't be. And then our video surveillance. And I think a couple key points here that I hope people can leave with tonight is one, this is not a continually monitored video surveillance. This is there for review of an event in hindsight. If something happens and we need to look at what happened. And this access to this is really limited. It's our building administrators and a few of their main office staff. It's so like campus monitors. It's our school resource officer and the police department. And then frankly, my team. So this is not something that we widely share. We have pretty limited access to it, but it's there as a tool to look back at events and incidences and, you know, see what happened. They do not have sound. So this is a video only review of those things, but they are helpful when we're looking to find out what happened, why'd the cart slide off into, you know, a different hall or whatever. Sometimes we can locate those things.
But Jim, I want to clarify, this is a 24/7 system throughout this entire district.
Yes.
We have eyes, we have these everywhere, and that's important. And the quality of the video is remarkable.
It's much better than we've had in the past, and it doesn't cover every square inch of the district, but it covers the vast majority of it. And for example, at the high school, we have 70 plus cameras inside. I think, or excuse me, 70 outside and 130 or so inside. So these are in the parking lots. They're on every entrance. They're in the halls. They're not in classrooms, but they're in the public spaces that we need to keep an eye on, gymnasiums, those kinds of places. The middle school, I think we have 116 or so cameras. And we continue to add cameras when we find we built these buildings. We did this work back in 2017, 18, 19, and then building the high school in 2020. We found we didn't put them in all the right spots. And so as we have moved forward, we've added some here and there to try to kind of fix blind spots. We shared one at the high school was we had two cameras going in two different directions, but you couldn't see right below it. And right below it was the entrance to the bathroom. And with some issues there. So we added basically a third camera so you can look down and we can cover that area now.
These were a huge part of our upgrade, correct?
Yeah.
Because I wasn't on the board, but we talked about this extensively when I got onto the board about how our old video system was just atrocious until we added this new system in.
Did not have enough cameras, and it was like watching a TV from the 50s.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so grainy. The new cameras, you can zoom in and they're just much improved. So.
And this is a huge safety feature for our school, for you guys to be able to look back when you need to and see exactly what took place and who was present. It's an amazing safety feature.
Yeah. Moving on to some updates for the high school. As you heard Dr. Lyon mention previously, we are working on adding 13 ADA parking spots near the east entrance to the stadium. We intend to make those spots available for stadium events, not just football and graduation, but soccer games and lacrosse games, those band events, all kinds of things. We're going to have to make some adjustments to the spaces and kind of the uses along that east access road, including adding some striping to indicate what's the pedestrian path if you're leaving a football game, as opposed to what's the path for cars that are leaving the ADA parking. We're going to have lots of people walking and a few cars leaving, and we need to be as clear as we can as to which zone each of them needs to be in. We need to add some bollards to limit car access to certain areas. And we're going to change who's allowed to park down there just so it's very clear. We also recognize that after many evening events, we have cars leaving and pedestrians in the parking lots at the same time. A good example is, after a basketball game in the winter, you have people coming out the front door. They have to cross the drive for people leaving. And anytime you have cars and pedestrians in the same area at night, even with the best lighting that you can have, it's a little bit nerve-wracking. We wanted to put some speed bumps in there. We're not able to. And so we're going to do some things visually with paint to try to draw attention to the fact that we want people to go slower through there and not be in a hurry to leave to get out to Hade Road. We are going to add some speed cushions along the west road. That's the one above the multi-purpose field and the student parking that leads out to either Hade or Kruger. We've got 4 spots that are going to get, again, asphalt speed bumps. They will extend kind of the entire width. They're the kind that are longer. It's not the short little 18-inch wide speed bumps. These have like a ramp of 6 feet, a flat spot of 4 feet, and then another ramp of 6. But they will do what's intended, which is to slow cars from going too fast along that space. Coincidentally, it's marked as a 5-mile-per-hour zone, which is very slow. So having some speed bumps there will help people stay closer to that limit. Another topic that's been raised is, as Dr. Line said, the open campus and students leaving at lunch, and we will be creating that committee to study looking at it. And really, this is partly because we moved from a school that was in town and close to food options to one that is, as was pointed out, kind of on the edge of town, with not a lot around it. And so that's extended kind of the time frame that it takes for students to get to and from restaurants if that's where they're going. And so we need to look at whether or not that's the safest option for students. And so looking at a closed campus committee this fall to explore that. One other thing at the high school, now that we have a few years experience with the high school, we are able to identify some improvements that we'd like to make. And the wayfinding inside the building, I think is really good, and it's pretty easy to find your way around. That's why we have each wing named a different name, and they have their own specific color. And then it's really easy to figure out what floor you're on or what classroom you're going to based on those things. We don't have that outside. And so, as I mentioned in my goals earlier in the work session, we're working with architectural firm to identify the exact locations where external signage can go. So when you drive onto the lot, you know where to park, and then you know where to go if you're trying to get to the stadium or the theater or the multipurpose fields or the front door. That will take a fair amount of signage. We have lots of ways to get around that property and lots of locations that people want to go. So it'll take a bit of time, but I'm excited that we're going to make that one happen. Some, if not all of you, have probably heard that we had a bit of an incident at one of our schools here in the last few weeks. It was shown by the police department. These are actually their pictures that I borrowed from them. We had students get on top of the roof, and then one of them stood on top of what is a 40-year-old skylight that was not able to hold their weight, and they fell to the hallway below. They are very fortunate that they were not hurt worse than they were. They were injured, and that's not good. So we need to do some things to minimize the ability for people to get on that roof. It's a challenge because of the way the building's constructed. And so we're looking at how we can best do that. But we're going to have to make some physical adjustments to spaces. I'm being a little bit evasive because I don't want to draw more attention to how they got on the building. My understanding after talking to some of the parents involved that this is not uncommon for students to be on top of that building. So we need to make it really uncommon, and that's going to take some work and effort. I do want to say our partnership with the city and with the Sherwood Police Department is a key component of our safety and security program here. We appreciate the fact that we have a full-time school resource officer, and we've made investments along with the city, or excuse me, really the police department at the high school office to make sure that Officer Wolfer can do his full job while he's there. I stole this picture from online. I really wanted to put the one of him either eating ice cream or wearing the cowboy hat, but I chose not to. Tried to leave it professional, but I think he looks distinguished. He looks distinguished. So in addition to the office at the high school that Officer Wolfer uses, we have space at the middle school that is dedicated. In the last year, it's been just for any officer that needed to come through and wanted a space to write reports, just to be present. The district and police department are working on hiring a second SRO. The police department has committed to that. And so when that happens, they will already have a space. And just having that extra presence within our buildings is really beneficial to us. And I think our community is appreciative of it. Oh, I will also say that Officer Wolfer's SRO corner has been very popular. So it's interesting to read, and I get comments from friends and stuff all the time. It's kind of fun to watch. Now, I know the board adopted the Safe Routes to Schools resolution in the consent agenda, but I thought it was important to bring up here to discuss for the community to hear about this important partnership that we have with the city. And the city and the school district have restarted conversations about continuing local Safe Routes to Schools work. Safe Routes to Schools refers to efforts that improve, educate, or encourage students to safely walk by foot or mobility device or bike to school. These efforts, while beneficial to students' education and health, also have the potential for grant funding to the city to improve infrastructure around our schools and throughout the city. Some of these projects also have potential direct impact on the district's budget. We've talked before, I think probably before all 5 of you are on this board, but we have one bus route that we have to do because we don't have a piece of sidewalk in place. And it's the sidewalk down on Washington, right next to Stella Olson. And so we end up busing students kind of in both directions there because that sidewalk's missing. It's a really difficult and really expensive sidewalk to put in. And so that's why we'd love to go after some Safe Routes to Schools grants to make that happen. But if we did, we could do away with one bus route, and bus routes are on a full year basis, roughly 6 figures. So it would be very advantageous to the district to support any efforts we can to make the Safe Routes to Schools money come through. It really can be a win-win for all of us. We're working this year with Hawksview and trying to work with their PAC to make sure that our partners at the city have the opportunity to help us with some walker roll to school events and other educational opportunities. So. And with that, I'd open up to further discussion or questions.
Not everybody hit your button at one time. Well, since I'm the person who asked for a review of all that, I really appreciate the time and effort you put into that. And I am grateful for all the safety mechanisms that we currently have in place. Our schools are very safe. But I think it's great that we continuously look at that, and we have a committee doing that, and we make improvements. I know when things happen in our schools, the community kind of gets on edge, and I totally understand that because I'm a parent too. But it is those times where we really reflect on how we're doing things and if we need to make some adjustments. And it seems like every one of those situations is really unique. So I appreciate that we're going to kind of take a look at the vegetables and just ask the questions and continue that work. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Dying up here.
Thanks for your time.
All right, our last information item is really an introduction to the book reconsideration process. Marlene Carroll and Amanda Hollenberg have been quite busy working on establishing this process, and tonight they're sharing it with our community. I know there have been a lot of comments in the past about what books are allowed into our schools and what books we have in our curriculum. And while we may not have responded how everybody wants us to respond or at the speed everybody wants us to respond, there really has been quite a lot of time and effort put into building this process. And largely due to Director Thorne and the work she's done with Marlene Carroll, we've kind of come to this place where you guys are able to introduce it. And I know she's grateful. I know I'm grateful that we've had an executive team who's been willing to partner with us. Truly, every time I've been in a meeting, it's been the feeling that we want to make this work. We want to hear from families, just as they've stated in their goals. That really is the intent of this process. And so I appreciate you guys are going to present to us tonight, and hopefully with a few tweaks, we'll get this process up and going, and families will feel like they really get to be a valuable part of giving us input here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Board Chair Hawkins, Dr. Lyon, board members. That was a great introduction, so I'll just get right to it. Tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about why we have a reconsideration process. We'll define some of the terms and and really look at the history and the case law around this, because that is why we have the board policy that we have, to follow the law. Then we'll dig deep into what the process will actually be. And then any future or the work ahead in the future development that we're working on with our media centers. So that is the presentation for tonight. Okay. Knowing the difference between the independent and choice reading and required reading is really important to this conversation. It's a part not only of why we even have the reconsideration process, but it also is kind of there's some nuances that can easily get confused. And so we'll just kind of go through these pieces. Independent reading is really students choose their own books. Students are not required to read any specific title from the classroom library or media center, nor are they required to check out any library books. So that's really the choice reading that we talk about a lot. Required reading is different. The district process for instructional materials approval, when we bring you board adopted instructional materials and we recommend those, this is our required reading. And we have a process for that, and these different materials are considered required for every student in the classroom. There's no self-selection by students unless it's like built into the design, like a book club, perhaps. These materials really are chosen for and not by the students. And that's really important as we start this conversation. In addition to that, it's important to know the case law behind this. In 1982, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled on this very issue around book challenges in that classroom. And they determined that school officials cannot remove books from a school library simply because they find the ideas of the book objectionable, as it challenges First Amendment rights. The First Amendment includes a bunch of rights, including intellectual freedom. And intellectual freedom is something that school districts have to abide by, which is why the Oregon Department of Education recently released a stance around challenged materials. And they said the U.S. Constitution restricts what a government may do. Therefore, public schools, public school libraries, and school officials are bound by obligations to uphold and protect the rights guaranteed to students under the Constitution. And so we as a school district really have to follow that. If you aren't familiar with intellectual freedom, it is defined as the right to receive information on a wide range of topics from a variety of viewpoints. That may sound very similar to the language in the board policy because that's where it originates from. As a public school, we have to balance that with the needs of our families. And so in many ways, this is a dance. So first, we need to note that students are minors and they get those First Amendment rights too. So we have to think about that. We also know that what works for some families doesn't work for all families. So we have to keep that in mind. We know that choice is really important and we want to offer that as much as possible. And we also want to ensure that parents get the right to choose what their child reads. And at the same time, we don't want any parent to choose what another child reads. So with all of this, we're really balancing and dancing around these complicated issues. Which leads us to why we really have this reconsideration process. We're trying to honor the federal law, the Constitution, the rights of parents, the rights of students, and with all of that, knowing that school officials cannot necessarily remove a book on their own. So these challenges to materials, they they may intersect with all of these principles. And that's why a reconsideration process that's done by a committee is so important. So it takes it out of one individual and puts it into a committee's hands. The reconsideration process also helps school districts eliminate risk. Anytime one person makes a decision without a careful process, there's risk for discrimination. And school districts have to follow school districts have to follow discrimination laws, and that's especially true for protected student groups. So we have to take that into consideration. We have to offer a variety of texts and materials, courses that represent all students in our schools. Finally, the reconsideration process, or our hope for it, and as we go through this first process is, we also want to make sure that there is that avenue for challengers of books. We don't want to, we want it to be really authentic and important part of our process, and we really value it. And so we want to make sure the reconsideration process is really friendly, welcoming, thoughtful, and we provide training and we do orientation, and we want that experience of our book challengers to also be really positive. So all different unique things that we're trying to balance as we go through this process. And with that, Amanda Hollenberg is going to really get into the weeds of the process and walk you through exactly what it will look like in the future weeks.
Right. I'm gonna move this. Has anybody ever seen the movie Twins? I need this up even higher. That kind of dates me. That's embarrassing. Thank you, Dr. Lyon, Board Chair Hawkins, and Board Directors for the time tonight to talk about the work that has been happening for a little over a year. I think Marlene touched on this, but it has been a lot of work and a lot of new learning for myself and ultimately the steering committee that we formed. So I'm really excited to share with all of you what has been done and the direction that we're moving with this work, and what actually just got rolled out with some of our administrators last week during All-8. So I think the first thing to touch on is the history and the need, so you understand a little bit more of the why. And this is important to understand specifically because we need to understand what happens with the books prior to them landing into our media centers, and what that looks like, that decision-making process. In 2012 and 13, due to budget restraints, our district moved from having a certified teacher that was supporting the media centers or the library to go to what is now a classified employee. And the classified employee is called an educational coordinator. So that's who I'm talking about when I'm referencing an educational coordinator. It's actually the library staff. Due to that change and the need for supporting of them, we knew that when we started this work, we wanted to give them more of a deeper lens and guidance for when they're choosing these books. All of our librarians or the educational coordinators have done an outstanding job from the time that they've stepped in, making decisions about books and book selection because they were following our board policy. But we also knew that they're not certified teachers and that we wanted to bulk up during all of this process their ability to make decisions and just give them extra support. And so you'll see in some of the products that we're going to discuss, or I'm going to discuss here, what all that entails. In addition to that, Marlene talked quite a bit about it, the risk. And it's really important for us to have a research-based reconsideration process because of the risk that we have with civil rights and the discrimination of certain groups of kiddos. And also it's just tricky, and it's really like a dance of how do we provide this vast collection that we are required and should do, while also maintaining a collection that is age appropriate and meets the needs of all of the families and their desires, because we have so many range of desires and wants from our families. And then the last piece that I think is very important, and this is the bulk of the presentation, is what does this reconsideration process look like, and how do we come about to get where we are at right now? So last year, I think it was around July, I was given the opportunity to start this work. And the reason why was because we've seen an increase in the state of Oregon and nationwide, and even more so of an uptick post-COVID of people coming to board meetings or to school districts concerned about books. And fortunately, we had a long runway because we hadn't had a book submitted for reconsideration. And so we have been blessed with the runway to do this work and do it really well and do it really research-based products. The steering committee was comprised of staff from teaching and learning, as well as an educational coordinator from each one of the levels. We were very fortunate that both of our city librarians joined the committee. And in addition to those, that was the bulk of who was in the meetings most of the time. But we also made partners or collaborative working relationships with other state librarians, and then Westland, Wilsonville, Lake Oswego, and Salem Kaiser. Those three school districts have had a book go through the process. And so we were very fortunate that they were able to share a lot of their documents with us. And a lot of our products are adapted from them. And we were very fortunate that they were willing to share all of that. And then I can't tell you how many times I've had meetings. Marlene has also accompanied me with these neighboring districts of just learning from what they have experienced and the do's and the don'ts. At the time that we started this work, ODE had not provided guidance for school districts. One of the state librarians and one of the people that we became thought partners with from Salem Kaiser actually ended up being on ODE's team that created the guidance. So fortunately, our work that we are one of our drafts, we're on draft like 10 at this moment, was from them. And so that was a really neat thing, that when ODE did release their guidance, we were like almost parallel preemptively with what they put out. So that was a really neat thing. I do want to make sure that I say thank you to the steering committee, because when I say that there's been a lot of work, I mean hours and hours and hours of revision. And it's not just the steering committee, it is a lot of the colleagues that are here today. Our administrative team have been in the throes of learning and training and giving feedback. And I thank so many of these people in this room for editing and going through all of this, because it is a whole new thing and we want to make sure that we do right by our students, our staff, our families, and the book challengers. The product that came out of phase 1 is, as you see right here. So we created a document for selection guidelines for our educational coordinators. It went into greater detail of what the board policy says. And in it, and you guys should have all of this in your packets, but it goes over the scope of the work, the instruction, the objectives, the criteria for selection, and then also down to the details of where we want them to go, and have another data point of where the book should be. I know it is blazing hot in here. The last one, and it's hot. Thank you. You also see that there's the reconsideration process outline. And I will talk in greater detail in a couple more slides about that. And then There's a nice friendly flow chart, especially for our families that are not familiar with education and lingo. I think there was some point, maybe 6 months in, when we were trying to figure out how we would present this, and Marlene was like, how about a flow chart? And if you haven't ever worked with Marlene, you will know at some point in time, she's going to suggest a flow chart. And so that is in honor of Marlene's thinking. And then we realized that our administrators in the process, one of our asks is for them to have a conversation with the book challenger prior to it coming to teaching and learning. And this is new learning for them. And so we created a conversation guideline for our administrators. And we rolled this out last year because they were experiencing some of these conversations. And then we did again, just this last week, do it again. And then in addition to that, we have an informal conversation tracker. So if and when a book challenger goes to a administrator or a teacher and it's not resolved, they'll fill out a form and it pings us in teaching and learning so we can keep track of the concerns. And then the reconsideration request form for the book challenger, and then the committee note taker form for if and when a book is challenged, what the committee will look at when they're reading the book. And all of those questions and those guiding things to look for are also based upon the board policy and the selection guidelines of our educational coordinators. I think something that I want to preface is we didn't get all of our work done that we had hoped for in phase one because of the funding woes that we experienced last year, and we just didn't have the funds to meet outside of contract time. And so this is a continuation of what we had hoped to get done last year. And so that's the guidance for discarding damaged or outdated library materials. And then we're currently fine tuning. It will be ready by next Tuesday, the reconsideration committee training. So when we have the folks that you guys have all elected to be on the team, we need to train them. And so we're finishing that, as well as the voting meeting. And then also, if and when we have the book challenger, we want to make sure that they're informed of what this whole process will entail and make sure that they feel comfortable going through that. And so that is also going to be a training and then a conversation that we will then host. So here is the flow chart for the reconsideration process. And I will say that I'm just going to start from the beginning. So we've got a librarian or an educational coordinator that's got funds. They are going to use the selection guidelines that the steering committee has created and use that as a reference of the how-to, in addition to referencing our board policy. Books are then purchased. You will see in another slide, we are going to start partnering with the media coordinator or the educational coordinators at a deeper level with teaching and learning and building supports before books are purchased. So I'll talk more about that. So we've got a book in a library, a kiddo checks it out. And then all of a sudden we have someone that is now a book challenger because they're concerned of the content. A book challenger is either a parent or guardian, can be either a parent or guardian, a city resident of Sherwood, and or a Sherwood School District staff member. We learned from one of our districts, neighboring partnering districts, that you want to make sure that you limit to that because that will prevent the school district from being open to interest groups coming in and getting into our business in our community. So if and when a book challenger has a concern, they will then have a formal conversation or an informal conversation with either the teacher and or the library or the educational coordinator. If the book challenger still feels like there is a concern, we will then ask them to meet with the administrator in the building. And that is when the administrator would use the conversation guide. If there's still not a formal resolution, the principal would then, or administrator would fill out the tracker and ping it to us and teaching and learning, and then let the book challenger know that they can then submit a request for a book reconsideration. Then the principal will let the other staff members know, and then obviously teaching and learning, we would be in the conversation with the building admin. At that point in time, the teaching and learning department would look at the book and the reconsideration form, and we would then determine if the book was or did follow the selection guidelines process, and if it is appropriately placed for our students. If we believe that the process was not followed or it is not in the appropriate location, we would then move it. At which point in time, we would let the book challenger know that that is what has been decided. Teaching and learning would never remove a book just on their own because we want to follow this process. If the book challenger at that point in time does not feel like the issue is or the concern is resolved and they want to still move forward, then we would begin the process of creating a committee to read the book. And then we would reconvene. We pull them in for an orientation meeting. They read the book, have a certain amount of days. We have in the process currently 30 school days from start to finish. And then we would reconvene the team. And if the book challenger chooses to join that final review voting meeting, there is a 15-minute window that we've set aside for the book challenger to come, clarify anything that they would like on behalf of their requests that they completed. And then we would allow any questions of the review committee if they had any, or it had any clarifying questions for the book challenger. At that point, the book challenger would leave and the committee would do a discussion in regards to the note taker form. And there'll be a protocol for each one of the members to share their thoughts, reflections. And then we would do an anonymous vote and collect it, and then we would go for the majority. In the outline or the guidance of this, you will see that we have an odd number of people on the voting team. I do want to preface that the decision made will be for 2 years. So no other book challenger could challenge that book for another 2 years. And also I want to highlight, and this is very important, that decision of the voting committee is done. So there is no appeal process. This is our process. I do want to note that something that I think is really important to highlight here is back to what Marlene was saying in her introduction. And it is that we want to make sure that the parent guard, the book challenger knows that if this is a choice book, independent reading book, that we can flag that book in the system and their student child will not check that out. And that is a way to mitigate their concern without impacting the availability for other students. So moving forward, in addition to the phase 1 work that we unfortunately didn't complete but are close to now, we've got phase 2 coming. And the things that we've got planned is fall training for all of the educational coordinators. We're pulling them in the first part of August for part of this training. And then we will continue to have for all of this training. And then we will continue to have monthly PLC meetings with teaching and learning and the media coordinator, educational coordinators. I'm sorry, I keep saying that. They used to be called media coordinators. In addition to that, each site will have a monthly meeting with the educational coordinator and the instructional coach and potentially another administrator. And these two are, I want to highlight, we really wanted to add additional support to the educational coordinators. It's a classified employee that has done a beautiful job for the last several years, but Division 22 requirements are that we do have a certified person in that position or that's directly supports it. And we've had that indirectly, but nothing like really black and white per se. And so this is going to add 2 additional layers to those book selection processes. In addition, I've had the beautiful opportunity to meet a lot of really wonderful local and state librarians. And so I'm going to continue my learning and some of us in teaching and learning and have regular meetings with them just to stay in the know of what we need to in regards to these processes. And then, as you guys are aware, we're going to continue to revisit and revise these plans. This is new to us. It's new to a lot of districts, and you go through it with your best interest. And I mean, just the other day, I received some feedback in regards to some of the communication that I was sending out, and I was like, yep, I should have included that. And so it's just those little things that we're making note of and refining as we go. But I do want to say that a lot of people have spent a lot of work on this, and we're really, really trying to make sure that it's research-based and it's got that dance that Marlene was speaking about, that is following the laws and the guidance that we need to as a public institute, while allowing a avenue for families or book challengers to have. I think that might be it. Questions?
Thank you. for
Yes,
that
of
detailed
course.
explanation. So are we not hiring a certified librarian? I didn't hear that in there.
Not at this point.
Okay,
No, we don't have the funds.
okay.
to do that.
The staff that is going to be part of this committee, how are they, have they been chosen, and what was the selection process? Was it volunteers? Can you elaborate a little bit more
For
on
the
that?
steering committee?
For the reconsideration?
Oh, for the reconsideration, yeah.
Mhm.
So how we have it is so the board has the 5,
Right.
and then we have 6 from the other composite of the team. And what we want it to be is people that are from the location of the site or the level of the book. So if it was an elementary book, we would have elementary people. If it is a middle, etc. In addition to, if it is at a secondary level, what we are doing is trying to get teachers or staff members that are experts in that content or potential theme of the book. And so if it is a book that has potential, like I don't know if it could be maybe a language arts book, or it has themes of literary value, but also maybe gender identity. We would then maybe see if we could get a psychology teacher or a health teacher. And so what this looked like for this process is we reached out to the high school and we said, we need Adam Mitchell as the principal. And then we need three teachers, preferably in the content area. So we've got experts sitting at the table.
Okay. And so it's different for, okay. Is the board notified when a book is challenged and then of the results?
Yes, absolutely. So as soon as the buildings complete the conversation tracker, that would be pinged to me. And then I would let Marlene know right away. And then she would also let exec know, and then they would
Inform us that there's a book under
absolutely.
challenge.
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
So in reading through, obviously, we understand the laws behind all of this. In reading through the library materials selection guidelines,
Yep.
there's, the laws are clear that you can't just remove a book, right? Because
Yep.
it may not. So that makes sense, right? And that's why it's critical that the guidelines for bringing a book in are very clearly defined.
Absolutely.
And so I see a lot of criteria for selection, but I don't really see any criteria for omission. Meaning like
Oh.
if it contains certain things at certain age groups, shouldn't that a list of those things be on this criteria
It's a
selection?
really good question. And so one of the last conversations that Marlene and I had with 2 of the state librarians and then one of the city was, is it advised to have like a rubric or something for content that could be considered controversial.
Or
And
inappropriate.
and they said that they highly recommend that we focus on going to 2 of these sites that they recommend, that the American Library Association recommends, and that if we cross-reference what they recommend, that would be the best practice for choosing books. And so if a book says, hey, it's appropriate for age 5 to 9, we would then house it at an elementary. In addition to, we're hoping that if and when we have books that potentially would have controversial material, that the 2 additional things that we're adding with the PLC meetings with teaching and learning, that we're going to be talking about books. And that's going to be the platform or the time that we're going to be able to do that and support these educational coordinators, in addition to the other meeting where the instructional coaches and building admin will be sitting down and having those discussions. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I would just add to that, you know, to have a really high quality library system, you really need a certified librarian to support that work who has their master's in librarian science. And so, you know, that is something that we have talked about, and although we don't have the funds right now, that's certainly something we're constantly thinking of, and we are relying on our partners. But a perfect world would have that librarian who is an expert in the field of cataloging books and building a library system.
Okay.
The best scenario for our situation is we've got 2 librarians in our city that are at the ready and have been since the beginning of this process. And every single time, late night, on the weekends, they have been available and they have met with me. And they are more than willing to support us in any way moving forward. And so that is a really great resource too for us to bounce ideas off of them while we don't have a certified librarian in our schools.
Okay. Last question.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of admittedly a guinea pig at the moment with this process, because as we know, I've submitted a book for reconsideration. And that's not a secret because we've talked about it at the board meetings. But so you've got the 5 selected board member assigned people, right? And then you've selected people at the high school level, that's staff, to do that. So does the challenger get, and I know that this is stuff, these are all like kinks, these are some questions that people are just going to have. So does the challenger, let's say that the challenger challenges a book, and this committee is formed, right? And what if I'm not saying that this is the case in mine, but just what if? So is the challenger then told who their committee is going to be, that they're going to be working with on this?
Is the challenge,
So
the people that are on
yeah.
in the review committee? Yeah, well, so the book challenger is welcomed at the first 15 minutes of the voting meeting. And so they would be in the room with all of the people that are on the committee.
Okay, so they're not, so then is the committee aware then of who the person is that's challenging the book when they're reviewing it?
Yes.
Okay, so the committee is aware of the person that challenged the book, but the challenger isn't aware of all the people that are on the committee.
I mean, we could, if you want to know the people ahead of time, yeah,
I'm
we
just,
could do that.
the reason I'm bringing it up is because it's a very small town, and a lot of people know each other. And like I said, this isn't the case for me.
Yeah.
But what if there were a personal conflict between somebody on the committee and the challenger? So that's why I'm wondering what kind of anonymity is there, and is it on both sides or none at all?
Well, so this is something that we thought about, and what our ask is and what we have created, that wasn't a part of your packet though, is a confidentiality form for the review committee. And it follows all of our HR guidelines, that we complete during any kind of interview process or hiring process. So kind of like Vegas, whatever happens in the review committee will stay in the review committee. And we ask them to do that, but obviously we will not ask that of the book challenger. I would hope that this process will mitigate any personal relations because it's a pretty cut and dry process and there isn't room for personal opinion. It's facts about the book. And with all due respect, I understand that you're the first person going through this process, but this process has been researched and the first per se guinea pigs were probably the other school districts that did it without anything. And we've got 3 districts that have done this many times, and that's what this process is based around.
And I totally understand that. The reason I'm asking the clarifying questions is because I'm wanting to avoid anyone in the future from holding back on going through this process because fear of retaliation or whatever, they might have a student that's in this person's class and I'm just wanting it to be clear that there is a level of confidentiality and
absolutely
there for this. And that it's not going to get complicated.
Sure. Yeah. And then I've got that and part of the orientation, like one of the first things that we will do is I will go over that with them and have them sign that. And then if they're not willing or able to do that, then we would excuse them and then get someone else that would.
Okay.
Or if a book challenger chose to be anonymous, could they have that choice? I mean, I know that would require them to not then come to the meeting, but if they said, I don't want to be known.
No, because how it is written is that we can have, we have to verify that they are a resident or a parent or a guardian or a Sherwood School District employee. So I don't know how we would have this be anonymous without verifying that that is the case.
And I didn't mean anonymous to everybody. I just meant anonymous to the majority of the committee. Perhaps you verified them, but the committee at large did not know who the book challenger was, if that person chose to do that.
Sure.
That could be especially the case if it were a staff member, right? And they wouldn't want their colleagues knowing that they had a problem with the book.
That's absolutely.
Could they then be represented by like a proxy if they wanted to do their 15-minute testimony?
I think if we're gonna do that, then we would have the proxy be the person that.
Like write a statement is what I mean and have it read.
Yeah, I think we could do that.
I think I just would love to see that kind of worked in a little bit because like I said, I don't want to prevent anyone that wants to go through this process from going through it because of fear of whether it's their student and a teacher or a staff member and they don't want their conflict with their colleagues or whatever. So
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. I just have a side question. Is it possible for the board members to get a copy of the book that's being challenged just because we are designating someone in our spot to do that? I mean, I don't want to
I would love
I'm kind of
to give you
interested
a
to read the
copy.
book.
I've got all of the available copies in the Portland Sherwood area right now in my office, but you can have them once they're done reading them for sure.
Okay, I'm just making sure that like if we want to also, even though we don't have a say in the process, if we want to read the book that we're at least know what we're hearing about. Okay.
I really appreciate the time that you guys have put into this. It was a lot and I wasn't even in half of the meetings, but I know every time there was a meeting, it was like, oh, what about this part? We didn't necessarily think about this piece or how this came to be. And it really kind of grew bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And you guys took on that work. And I am very appreciative. I know they are as well. It's been a major job and there will undoubtedly be flaws. I mean, it's just, I don't know how there couldn't be.
System.
But I think that it hopefully shows this community that this is an honest effort to look at this process and really take in their feedback. And just to be clear, 'cause I don't think you addressed it, but we each got to select our own. So it was up to us to decide however we wanted to select somebody. And I know Matt was saying earlier that he selected someone who's an author. I had a parent who's just always at meetings and commenting and in public who asked, can I be? And I said, great, and so we went through different ways to select somebody and they were required to do it for 1 year. And we were going to revisit that later to see how much time it took for them to be a part of this committee and what that looked like after a year. So
Yeah.
in case people were wondering how those people were chosen.
Yeah, and thank you for getting us the names, and they've all been lovely in my communication so far, and we've got them all lined up for the dates, and so thank you.
And I'm glad it doesn't end with a decision by us, because we are not experts or librarians or teachers
Yeah.
or I really don't want that job to fall on me. And so thank you for doing that job.
Of course.
And I do want to, just thank you.
Of
I
course.
just want to reiterate, because I don't want my questions to be seen as me challenging anything. That's not what I'm doing. I'm really just seeking clarification.
No, yeah.
It's a new process, and I just want it to be, as available or to people that want it, and just we're all learning it kind of as we go through this for this first time. So I'm so grateful to you guys for all of the work that you've put into this, and truly, really, I'm really grateful that we get to work together, and that you guys have heard, the concerns, and that you just took it and you ran with it, and that's really great. So thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. As our last order of business, Dr. Lyon will be presenting OSBA policy updates before we all die in here. The heat.
Thank you. And I know this is what y'all have been waiting for in the audience. And I do know my job here right now is to move it along. So for a reminder, especially for our new board members, the Oregon School Boards Association periodically, about 3 times a year, delivers to all school districts in Oregon a packet of policy updates. And what they do with their legal help is they translate legislative action into school board policy. They are very good at it, and they will frankly tell us policies that are required by new laws or changes in law, and those that are optional. And just so everyone understands, when we get these packets, we distribute them to the executive team members by area of expertise. So Steve gets all the HR and bargaining policies. His job is to review, make notes on it. After a period of time, they all come back to our exec team meeting. We talk about those that we want to advance. Of course, the required ones are automatically advanced. And we talk about the impact of the policy that are optional on our school district. Now we bring them to the board as a first read, and that's what we're doing this evening. So we have, Christine.
I just want to highlight also, any policy changes that would have been impacted by the recent legislative session are not ready yet from OSBA. So what you're going to see here tonight does not reflect anything from the most recent legislative session.
Right. We have the latest legislative session. Those aren't even translated yet. These are the batch from the last part of last year. So your job is to, on the first read, is to, between now and the next board meeting, look and study the work that the executive team members have done. Note any questions or comments, particularly related to optional policies. And if you have any questions, start with us and we'll talk about it. And if you want to elevate that where you have concerns or additions or deletions, it'll go to the rest of the board. And then we will deliberate on second reading and we'll see where we are and either pass or not pass those optional policies. So we decided last year the way we're going to do this is to put a slide deck together, and we're going to go fairly quickly through this slide deck. So onward. I read that slide already. Next. Required. ACAR, discrimination, AKF, the graduation requirements that Marlene addressed earlier. We don't have options. You can read the language. Those are cut and dry. Next slide. Required. They do a lot of cleanup, and they also tailor timelines to legal requirements. So would you see these two required on the hazing, harassment, intimidation, bullying, menacing, cyberbullying, or teen dating violence reporting procedures? It's just talking about wordsmithing and timelines. Same with JGE, expulsion required. So you can take a look at those. Next slide. These are highly recommended, meaning if you don't pass them, do so at your own risk, because you're leaving yourself out a little bit on a limb regarding liability. Highly recommended policies around HR include layoff and recall of administrative personnel. Program exemptions, that is just some timeline language, if I recall properly, about legal requirements for requesting an exemption from school activities and programs. And then the public complaint procedure, that one you should look at. It expands some of our timelines. I think it changes some of the 10 days to 30 days. And I kind of like that. It gives, the 10-day was a little bit of a tight timeline to review and do an investigation and then issue a written report. So those are highly recommended. The last one is optional. Next slide. You've got individual board members' authority and responsibilities, tons of wordsmithing in that. I didn't see anything radically different. Board meetings, that one, I don't know the ramifications of that, other than I think we already do what that that says it does. And then the paid family medical leave insurance, it is tailored to comply with this very new paid leave Oregon law, which takes effect, there it is on the slide, September 3rd. Steve, why is it optional?
We had to have a board policy regarding paid leave Oregon, but because we went through a third party, through American Fidelity, they had 3 different options you could choose from. And if you went through a third party, you had to choose this one.
And then the final one is also related to HR, reduction or recall of licensed staff. And Steve, anything you want to note on that?
No, again, these are really the same process that we have followed probably forever. And it's mainly wordsmithing.
Okay, so Christine.
Just one more thing, because I know we have some newer members on the board. So one of the recommendations that we consistently get from OSBA related to policy is a lot of the language is pulled directly from the language of the law. So any wordsmithing can actually change the legal definition and thereby change our legal liability. So as you're doing this review, if you're thinking of like sections where you want word changes, we definitely need to leave enough time for OSBA to review any of those suggestions.
Yeah. That went really fast and I apologize, but I know it's hot in here and it's late and we want to go home. So if you have questions, if there's stuff that you need more with, just reach out and we're here.
Those are also really wordy and dense and require you to kind of sit in a quiet place and pay attention. So just take the opportunity to do that if you can in the next week or so. Let me know if you have questions, maybe 2 weeks. Let me know if you have any questions or concerns, and we'll get your answers for you. All right, I'm going to adjourn this meeting before we all bake.
Chair Hawkins.
Yes.
I'd like to quickly apologize to the board, my peers. This is the first meeting after Dale Garaki's retirement. And while I was very clear that we needed to have air conditioning on, apparently I wasn't clear when it needed to turn off. And it turned off much too early. And for that, I apologize to all of you. I run cold. I'm in heaven. Thank you.
Look at the money we're saving. Okay. The next board meeting will be held on September 20th, but the next city council meeting will be September 5th. If you'd like to join us, this meeting is adjourned.
Take the vegetables